What if your husband, whom you trusted with your heart, turned out to be secretly manipulating you all along? What if his actions threatened not only your happiness but the future of your child? Ashley Dalton thought she had everything under control. Married to Ryan for 5 years with a young son, Oliver, she balanced part-time work and a stable home. But when her husband's overindulgence of his sister Tiffany turned into emotional manipulation and betrayal, everything began to unravel. One shocking discovery led to a chain of events that would shatter Ashley's life, as Ryan's financial schemes and Tiffany's demands pushed her to the brink. Can Ashley stand her ground for her son, or will she be forced to sacrifice everything? Want to find out what happens next? Subscribe and stay tuned to see how Ashley takes control of her destiny. I'm Ashley Dalton, about to turn 27 this year, and I've been happily married to Ryan for 5 years. Our son, Oliver, just turned 4. In the beginning, I worked full-time after our wedding, but now I balance part-time work at the same company. Ryan, 30, is 3 years older than me. Our relationship began with Ryan's passionate pursuit, but after we married, I noticed a shift in him. He became more dominating. Ryan has a 20-year-old sister, Tiffany, and their age gap seemed to create a relationship where he indulges her a lot. Before we got married, I didn't mind Tiffany visiting often. I assumed they just got along well. But after we were married, things began to change. Tiffany started showing up at all hours, unannounced, expecting to be waited on without offering any gratitude. Ryan, rather than addressing it, expected me to accommodate her every time. Tiffany barely acknowledges me, breezing in and casually saying, "Brother, I'm here again." Even when I hadn't prepared for an extra guest, I ended up serving Tiffany dinner. Ryan, instead of understanding the situation, scolded me, saying I should have been more considerate. Tiffany would apologize, but it was clear she relished the preferential treatment from Ryan. Left with leftovers, I'd make myself something else while Ryan and Tiffany lounged on the sofa, completely ignoring me and Oliver. It felt like we were just servants in our own home. One evening, as I was about to take a bath with Oliver, Ryan interrupted, ordering me to buy a cake for Tiffany. It was already late, but Tiffany insisted she wanted it now. Ryan blamed me for the delay. I felt forced into action, so I reluctantly took Oliver with me to the cake shop. While there, I overheard their conversation. Ryan and Tiffany were criticizing me, questioning the decision to marry me. Oliver, though he couldn't understand the words, could feel the tension between Ryan and me. I forced a smile and asked him which cake he wanted. He excitedly picked one with lots of fruit. Our trip to the cake shop, though filled with frustration, was momentarily lightened by Oliver's cheerful chatter about cakes. We arrived just before the shop closed and managed to get the cake Tiffany wanted, along with the fruit cake Oliver had chosen. When we got home, I served both cakes to Tiffany and Ryan, then prepared Oliver's cake and took it to the dining room. But just as I placed it in front of Oliver, Tiffany pointed at it and demanded it for herself. Before I could say a word, Ryan pushed Oliver's cake in front of Tiffany, ignoring Oliver's protests. Ryan justified his actions, saying he paid for the cake and had the right to choose what Oliver could have. That was the breaking point. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I expressed my frustration. In response, Ryan threatened divorce. Oliver, now calm but confused, grabbed my hand and after a moment of thought said, "Mom, I love cake with strawberries too. It's really delicious," and took a bite of the cake Tiffany had originally wanted. Feeling that Oliver was enduring too much, I lifted his cake plate. When I saw Tiffany reaching for it, I took Oliver to the next room so he could enjoy his cake in peace. Ryan apologized to Tiffany, claiming he was sorry for being stingy. Despite wanting to retort, I held back for Oliver's sake. Watching Oliver innocently enjoy his cake was a heartwarming sight. After finishing the cake, we decided to have a late bath and sleep in Oliver's bed. The next morning, I discovered Tiffany had already left. As I prepared breakfast, I heard Oliver crying. Shockingly, his piggy bank, a gift from my father, was broken and the saved money was gone. Oliver, who always said goodnight to the piggy bank, was left heartbroken. When I questioned Ryan about it, he casually mentioned that Tiffany needed some money, so she took it from the piggy bank. Holding a crying and shaking Oliver, I felt his pain so acutely that I cried with him. It was painful to witness Ryan prioritizing and caring for his sister more than our son. Expressing my anger and sadness, I confronted Ryan, breaking my usual silence on arguments in front of Oliver. Ryan, without a word, went to the bedroom and returned with something shocking in hand. Divorce papers. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Ryan had tucked away somewhere I didn't know. In a sudden burst, he confronted me, shoving the papers at me before storming out of the house with a loud bang. Oliver, who had never cried over the issues with Ryan and Tiffany, seemed to have reached his limit crying since last night. Unable to bear seeing Oliver so hurt, I suggested skipping daycare for the day, and he happily agreed with a loud, "Yes!" showing a faint smile. We spent the day playing and bonding with Oliver, bringing a picture book from the shelf, sitting on my lap, and happily remarking, "The teacher at the nursery today was Mama, right?" He looks like an angel. His little heart seemed filled with patience, and I decided to make the day special by taking a day off from work. Despite causing potential trouble at my workplace, they kindly understood the situation and granted me a day off. In the morning, we visited the park, played hide and seek, and had fun in the sandbox and on the slide. When we returned home for lunch, Oliver appeared sleepy, usually napping by himself, but today he fell asleep on my lap like when he was a baby. Though I initially thought of doing household chores during his nap, I decided that today was special. Instead, I allowed myself to be healed by his peaceful sleeping face and gentle breathing. However, my serene moment was abruptly interrupted by a noise from the entrance, indicating the front door had opened. As it wasn't Ryan's usual time to come home, I became suspicious and quickly hid in the bedroom closet, clutching Oliver. A voice echoed through the house, and to my surprise, it was Tiffany. Trembling with fear, I listened as she searched for something, expressing frustration over not finding it. Tiffany then made a phone call, mentioning Ryan and discussing their unsuccessful search. After hearing her lock the front door and leave, I put Oliver to bed and contemplated the strange events. I couldn't comprehend why Tiffany had entered the house and what they were looking for. Suddenly, Ryan seemed like a stranger, and I felt a mix of disgust and fear towards him. Swiftly packing essentials for Oliver and myself, we headed to the station and took a train to my parents' house. Fortunately, their home was nearby, just 2 stations away. Although I hadn't contacted them beforehand, my parents sensed something from my expression and welcomed us without asking questions. I shared the entire ordeal with my parents, including my growing fear of staying in our home because of Ryan and Tiffany's suspicious behavior. When my mother suggested that Tiffany might be looking for my belongings, possibly cash cards, a sudden realization hit me. I remembered my past as a successful CEO in the handmade goods industry before I decided to step back and focus on raising our child after marriage. I had entrusted the company to trusted friends, but Ryan had no idea that I still held the title of CEO. It was during this time that I discovered the hidden divorce papers Ryan had stashed away, clearly thinking I had a decent amount of savings. I had mentioned to him that I still received some support from the company, but I intentionally kept the details of my savings and my role as CEO a secret. This secrecy stemmed from the realization early in our marriage that Ryan struggled with managing money. He often spent everything he earned without thought for the future. When we first married, Ryan only gave me $200 a month for food expenses and suggested I quit my job to be a full-time housewife. But with the financial pressure of raising Oliver and surviving on just $200 for food, I refused to give up working. Eventually, he reluctantly agreed to let me work part-time, but to ensure I wouldn't think about divorce, he had me sign a post-marital property waiver through a lawyer. Since Oliver's birth, I'd used my savings for his nursery fees and clothes because that $200 barely covered food. I never asked Ryan for more money, which led him to believe I had savings. Given Tiffany's apparent need for money and Ryan's assumptions about my financial situation, I feared they might be looking for my cash cards. I have a separate savings account just for Oliver, with part of my salary directly deposited into it each month. Despite their searching, they wouldn't find my cash cards because I always carry them with me. But there was still an unsettling issue. Tiffany might be coming into our house when we weren't there, and Ryan might be allowing it. Following my father's advice, I decided to store my valuables, including the cash cards, in my parents' safe for safekeeping. While I was deep in thought, Oliver approached my father, tears streaming down his face over his broken piggy bank and his shattered promise of saving up. My father, furious at what had happened, vowed to call Ryan. My mother, on the other hand, suggested I calmly figure out what Tiffany and Ryan were really after. She believed that if Ryan mentioned divorce, it might turn the blame on us, making it easier for him to get what he wanted. To get to the bottom of their intentions, I decided to record their conversation. I consulted a lawyer who was a friend of my father's and, returning home, started cooking dinner. With my phone screen facing down, I secretly began recording. Ryan arrived home and immediately asked about my cash cards. When I questioned him, he gave vague answers, clearly trying to deceive me. When I stayed silent, Ryan grew more agitated and demanded that I hand over all my part-time earnings for his sister. I refused, explaining that it was Oliver's savings. In response, he angrily shoved the divorce papers toward me, declaring that I was living off his money and didn't need to save for Oliver. He even said something that made it clear he valued Tiffany more than our son. In that moment, I stopped what I was doing, slipped the divorce papers into my bag, grabbed Oliver's hand, and walked toward the door. Ryan's shout echoed behind me as he declared his intention to divorce me, telling me to never return. I stood my ground and firmly told him that I wouldn't go back to a house where a stranger could come and go freely. Once outside, I ignored the flood of messages and calls from Ryan, turning my phone off completely. I found refuge at my parents' house, sharing the recording and the divorce papers with them. While I confessed that I no longer loved Ryan, I expressed deep concern for Oliver. My parents, understanding the weight of the situation, told me to make the decision that felt right for me, though they also acknowledged how much it would hurt Oliver if we divorced. While I struggled with the decision, Oliver's voice broke through the heaviness. He was hungry. My mother, seeing my distress, made hamburgers his favorite dish. As I watched Oliver take a bite, joy lit up his face. He praised Gran's hamburgers, saying he wished he could eat them every day. With a tight smile, I told him that the hamburger was filled with my love for him. In a tender moment, he took a big bite and offered it to me. Overcome with emotion, my tears began to fall, despite my attempts to hold them back. Noticing my tears, my father reassured Oliver, saying they were tears of happiness, not sadness. Oliver, sensing my emotion, hugged me tightly, and my father's eyes grew red with unspoken feelings. At that moment, I realized the true value of being with family. I told Oliver that family is precious. Surprised, he asked if Dad had said Tiffany was the only family. My father gently confirmed, but then asked Oliver if he wanted to live with us as family. With a laugh, Oliver happily agreed, and the room filled with smiles. Despite still contemplating the divorce, the warmth of that meal helped me make the final decision to leave Ryan. I knew I needed to talk to Oliver about it, though it broke my heart. Oliver seemed to understand, and with a bright smile, he expressed his desire to stay with us as a family, even calling our pet dog his younger brother, despite the dog being older. The preparations for the divorce began. I contacted a lawyer who was a family friend, and the next day we finalized the contract. My father and Oliver shared a moment of laughter, and I lay in bed, reflecting on my childhood, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. The following day, I checked my phone and saw over 200 calls and messages from Ryan, his emotional instability clear in every one. I shut my phone off again and, with the lawyer's help, explained everything to my parents. It turned out that Tiffany had piled up a huge amount of debt from gambling and shopping, with Ryan acting as her guarantor and planning to dip into my savings. The lawyer confirmed that the divorce papers had already been filed, and when Ryan realized it was final, he cried. Although I had expected a fight over child support, he signed a pledge to pay $340 to Oliver each month. Ryan called again, his tone no longer hostile but calm. He admitted to financial manipulation and confessed his complicated feelings toward Tiffany. I stood firm in my decision and heard his soft sobbing before he wished me happiness and hung up. I stayed strong, and after discussing future plans with my parents, I decided to stay with them until Oliver was older. I returned to my role as the company president and later learned that Ryan and Tiffany had informed their parents about the divorce and the debts, leading to them being disowned. Today, I find peace and happiness with my family. What would you do if everything you thought you knew about your family crumbled in an instant? If the person you trusted the most turned out to be the one who betrayed you, that's what happened to me when I discovered the extent of Ryan's manipulation, not just toward me, but toward our son, Oliver. The weight of everything hit me like a wave. The years of emotional neglect, the lies, and the hidden divorce papers Ryan had kept from me. But what really shook me was how easily Ryan dismissed our family, how he prioritized Tiffany, his sister, over our son, his own flesh and blood. That was the breaking point. The moment I realized that this wasn't just about money, it was about control. And I had spent far too long letting him control me. It's strange, isn't it? How it can take one moment, one decision, to change everything. The day I left wasn't just about leaving Ryan. It was about reclaiming my voice, my worth, and most importantly, my son's future. I had spent so much time trying to fit into Ryan's world, trying to be the perfect wife and mother, but I was forgetting about me. I was forgetting to protect Oliver and what he deserved, a loving, stable home. So, I took control. I made the hardest decision of my life. To walk away from Ryan, to reclaim my life and rebuild it on my own terms. Now, I'm learning how to live for myself and for Oliver, no longer bound by the weight of others' expectations. What would you do if you found yourself in a similar situation? Would you walk away, or would you stay and try to fix things? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on my journey.